Okay. Let's get into a serious topic. Okay, who am I kidding? This is not a serious topic. We're gonna be watching this. So I don't know if you guys know about Crackhead Barney, and this is going to pivot eventually into a panel about Israel-Palestine. But Crackhead Barney is a protest icon. And so what they do is they go to different protests and then they just act as ratchet and just as cranky and as ridiculous and as silly as possible. And it's supposed to be some sort of, at least from the creator's perspective, like art piece, performative art, you know? Make people laugh, make bad politicians and political figures look silly. But as with many people who seek attention and are extremely performative, that performance can get very, very annoying. And this is something that happened recently with Alec Baldwin, the actor who, you know, shot that person, but then found to not be guilty and instead it went over to the armorer. Well, apparently he's also a supporter of Israel. And Crackhead Barney wanted to confront him on this at a hotel where he was getting breakfast. And it quickly becomes uncomfortable. And that's why Piers Morgan had this Crackhead Barney person on the show before eventually we get to the panel. In fact, can we bring up the Crackhead Barney clip? I think we're going to bring up the Crackhead Barney clip. Alec Baldwin. Here it is.
Can you please say free Palestine one time? Why did you kill that lady? You killed that lady and got no jail time? No jail time, Alec?
So sorry.
No jail time, Alec. You're putting innocent people in jail, Alec Baldwin.
I'm so sorry.
Free Palestine, Alec, just one time, and I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone, I swear. Just say free Palestine one time. One time. One time.
Call the police.
One time, Alec. You know he's a criminal. You know he's a fucking criminal. Come on, Alec, just say free Palestine one time. One time, just one time, please, and I'll leave you alone. Free Palestine. Fuck Israel, fuck Zionism. Please say it. One time.
Could you do me one quick favor?
I'm sorry, man. Maybe it's unintentional, but that comedic timing of, could you do me one quick favor? Yeah, that right there, funniest thing Alec Baldwin's ever done, okay? Funniest thing Alec Baldwin has ever done. And I'm not saying that with like a great eminence for the man. I'm not really a fan of Alec Baldwin as a humor, as an impression, his impressions, not really. But that right there, that was quality. So the thing is, right, I'm sure if I sat down with Alec Baldwin, I could find some disagreements between us on geopolitics, probably on the issue of Israel-Palestine as well. But when you confront people like this in public and then you don't give it up, there's already a question about confronting people in public about their politics, especially when it's like not in a setting for that. But then when you do it and then you just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, when there's good reason to see, I mean, you can tell that he's not giving way. At a certain point, you lose people. You just lose them. Because people cease to see the purpose. I cease to see the purpose at a certain point. Besides, either you want to annoy Alec Baldwin, which if that is the goal, congratulations. Didn't achieve anything, but congratulations, you've succeeded in annoying Alec Baldwin to the point where he's smacking your phone around. Or is it just to bring general attention to the concept of Israel-Palestine? And if that is the case, to me, there's so many other better ways to center that conversation that focuses on the conversation. That focuses on the convo. See, if she would have done this like one, twice and gave it up, or if she chose somebody who was like an infamous like speaker on this issue, was like, I want to level Gaza, then maybe this would even be more like people would take it more. But when this is just an actor who is pro-Israel, as many Hollywood actors are, because that was the standard for forever, basically. And it still is the general standard of people in Hollywood and people in the United States generally being pro-Israel. And you just act this way, it makes me think it's for clout and not for bringing attention to the issue. And you just want to bring attention to yourself. And as somebody who's a performance actor, that would make sense to me. But that means, to me, it feels like using it as a prop. Now, I understand people try to find a lot of different ways to bring attention to Israel-Palestine. Maybe she really does believe she's bringing positive attention to the cause. I just don't see it. I don't think this makes the cause of Palestine look good. I think what this does, it makes people remember the name Crackhead Barney, because it's pretty memorable name, and maybe laugh at Alec Baldwin. But that's not the reaction this got, by the way. This isn't the reaction it got. Now, Low Tier God, he posted about it in like an anti-Alec Baldwin way. But every post I see, even in the ones under this, and you see other ones, that was kind of funny. Lucky he didn't shoot anyone. But most of them have been in support of Alec Baldwin. I've seen a lot of like conservative posters and even some liberal posters saying like, congratulations, you made me like Alec Baldwin. I didn't know I could do that. Either way, I don't think that this was centered in great activism. And I don't see the purpose. Maybe if this was like Israel, maybe if this was like that Israeli cabinet member called to like nuke Gaza or something, but it's Alec Baldwin. I fail to see the exact purpose. But Crackhead Barney went on Piers Morgan to defend herself before they brought on Hasan and others to debate the Israel-Palestine issue and Crackhead Barney's performance, I guess you could call it.
Well, the war in Gaza has incensed communities across the world. Many Jewish people say they don't feel safe on the streets of Western cities. Many Muslims feel the horror facing innocent Palestinians is treated only as a second-class concern. And as with any emotive cause, a lot of people with no dog in the fight have moulded this crisis into a familiar battle of good versus evil, oppressors versus oppressed. Hysterical scenes at some of America's top universities this week have generated more coverage and commentary than the war itself in the last 2 weeks. Columbia says that all in-person classes are now cancelled until the end of the semester. Arrests have been made at encampments outside NYU and Yale. Well, one notable Jewish professor at Columbia shared a video of Muslims praying as if it was a shocking assault on US values.
I saw this too. Like, there was so many other I mean, not so many, but there were other instances you could point to at Columbia High. Like that one girl with the sign that was like Qassam's next victims pointing towards the pro-Israel counter-protesters, which seems like an incitement to violence. That's bad. There was like other instances you can point to. But this right here, and I reacted to it on Twitter saying, if you don't believe in freedom of religion, if something like this scares you or you need to like, if you feel like you need to shut this down, I don't think we share the same religious values. I mean, not religious values, but values around freedom. A free society, one of its main building blocks is going to be freedom of religion. If you don't have freedom of religion, you cannot have a free society. That doesn't mean you let religion take over government institutions. You can have a secular state. I want a secular state, but freedom of religion is a building block for a free society. And if it's too much for you to look at a college campus and see a bunch of people engaging in Muslim prayer, then I don't think that this is a country for you. At least not when it comes to its religious values.
Many badly informed pro-Palestine demonstrators, meanwhile, have called for an intifada and chanted, "We love Hamas." Others believe that synchronised dancing is a long-lost secret to peace in the Middle East. Well, these people are all spending $80,000 a year on tuition, but clearly many of them haven't found Wikipedia, and this virtue-signalling fever is now emboldening a growing number of people to confront public figures. There's simply no connection to the war. This was New York Mayor Eric Adams, berated for supporting genocide as he took his seat on a flight.
Hey, Eric Adams? Yeah, you! You support the genocide in Palestine. There are homeless people all over New York. You're always partying. You actually care about the citizens of New York. People cannot afford...
See, like, honestly, unironically, even though I don't think this does anything either, I don't think she's being particularly convincing. But again, like, this, I guess it isn't made to appeal to me. But at least, like, Eric Adams is a politician. Eric Adams, like, bragged about, like, getting a home in the Golan Heights, which under international law is designated as occupied Syrian territory, right? There is real, like, you know, there's more to this, I feel, than, like, at least the performance than doing what that happened with Alec Baldwin. And even this, it's, like, not that good. They're not doing a good job, I don't think. But at least, like, this would be somewhere more in the realm of possibility. But like a better way to confront would be like, hey, Eric Adams, I mean, you're a man who says to respect the law. Why are you getting territory and occupied territory? Isn't that against international law? Why would you do that? Like, this would, you know, there's an area you could go at. But no, it's all gotta be like cussing and making like a big scene. And I mean, you can make a scene to some extent if you're confronting somebody, but it's never the non-schizophrenics doing this, huh?
You keep cutting the education budget so you can.
But I shouldn't. I don't know if I should say schizophrenic. It's an issue that really gets people really heated. So I understand why people are energized by it. But Crackhead Barney, I will stand by that.
Fund the police.
And this so-called performance artist has dominated timelines for days after achieving what previously seemed impossible, an outpouring of public sympathy for Alec Baldwin by doing this.
You're putting innocent people in jail, Alec Baldwin.
I'm so sorry.
Free Palestine, Alec, just one time, and I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone, I swear. Just say Free Palestine one time. One time. One time.
Call the police.
One time, Alec. You know he's a criminal. You know he's.
See, look, I thought this was unfair, right? Because I always thought, as far as I was aware, that Alec Baldwin was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad guy, just not a Hamas guy. So, I mean, maybe if she just like, you know, ask for a few of their slogans, it'd go different.
Criminal. Come on, Alec. Just say Free Palestine one time. Israel, Zionism. Please say it. One time.
Could you do me one quick favor?
I'm sorry, that's the timing.
So does any of this make a difference? Are these demonstrators forcing the rich and powerful to confront and condemn the horrors of war? Or is it a wave of self-indulgent protest, just distracting us from the deadly serious realities of a grim ongoing war? In a moment, I'll debate all that with Hasan Piker.
I honestly, I don't think you can put the Crackhead Barney stuff on the same level as the Columbia stuff. Because Columbia, you're talking about so many different people, so many different groups, protesting for so many different reasons, where Crackhead Barney is openly a performance artist. So the incentives are different here. I think that maybe there's like, people get some sense of aggrandizement through protests and centering themselves in protests. I saw that one person walk into the middle of the Columbia Heights protest and it just said, "I'm a Jew," and they stood there and they like got every angle of them. And then they uploaded the video online and it said, "I'm so proud of my wife, a brave Jew." And nobody bothered them, nobody touched them, nothing happened. Right? That right there, I look at it and I'm like, that is somebody who wants attention, that's seeking self-aggrandizement. I can acknowledge that, but when you're talking about a protest that spans so many thousands of people, the motivations are going to be varied, and you can't, I think, dumb it down to this equation with Crackhead Barney. There's certainly people who engage in that type of behavior, attention seekers, but, I mean, obviously, I don't think this is all the same. I don't want to equivocate all of this.
Emily Austin, Esther, Krakue, and James Barr. But first, I'm joined by Alec Baldwin's antagonist there.
I'm sorry. I was going to go look at the clip of the woman who stood in the middle of the Columbia Heights, but I gotta... Oh my goodness. Okay, you know, I think we're gonna... You know, maybe we'll stick to this. I'm a little thrown off. I think... What type of solution do you think she's gonna offer? Do you think she's gonna offer a two-state solution, a one-state solution? What do you think is gonna be her policy on resettlement and land back? I wonder if she believes the Saudi plan is the way to go, or if she's more of the Trumpian Jared Kushner model.
Crackhead Barney. Well, welcome to Uncensored.
Hey, Piers! I've been waiting for you, Piers fucking Morgan!
Okay.
I wore my diaper today for you, Piers. Do you like it?
Not particularly, no. Do you want to sit down?
And Piers, can you bring me to Buckingham Palace? I would like to meet the Queen.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I'd really like to meet the Queen.
I don't think the Queen, if you mean Queen Camilla, she is probably tied up with royal engagements at the moment. If you meant the Queen who died...
Well, get me in, Piers!
Yeah.
Get me fucking in, Piers! I want it!
Okay, can I take you back, if I may, to what you did to Alec Baldwin? Can you explain why you did it?
Honestly, I think she could join the Freedom Caucus.
What did I do to Alec Baldwin? Piers, do you see the damage that Alec did to me? Do you see the damage? Look at my arms! Look at my arms, Piers! Look at my neck! I was maimed by a white man on Monday! You're telling me what I did?
No, you weren't maimed by Alec Baldwin on Monday, were you?
Very convincing.
I was maimed!
No,
my
you weren't.
hand is broken! My neck is broken!
No, it's
my
not.
legs! Look at my legs! My legs don't work! Look at this! Piers! Piers, are you another white devil?
I could hear the production staff laughing. They can't keep themselves under control. What was the purpose of bringing her on? Like when they okay, you're the Piers Morgan staff. You invite this crackhead, I don't know how else to call it, the crackhead on, right? And maybe you expect them to come in like the normal outfit and be like, yeah, so my performance art is yada yada yada. But they come in dressed like this. And maybe she just starts undressing in there, and then she takes out her, you know, and puts on the diaper. But at no point did someone say, no, we're just not going to put that on the air. We respect ourselves too much to put this on national television, on one of the biggest names in like news conversation, political conversations out there right now. I mean, Piers Morgan is on a roll. He's on a roll. And he let in the crackdown. Why? I mean, she comes in looking like this. What's the purpose? Look, I'm the hippy dippy guy. I'm not against a good freak show, right? But I feel like it should be an intellectual freak show. Not not an actual freak show.
It's too early in the morning, Pierce! Pierce, it's too early!
Not the wig.
Your wig's come off.
It's not a wig, Pierce. It's my hair. I'm a white woman. I identify as a white woman.
Let me ask you seriously, if I may, for a
Oh, that's what all that gunk is. Okay, well, at least I understand it now.
moment. Because you're trying to make a serious point,
Yes.
I presume, with Alec Baldwin. He was getting a coffee. You run in, you call him a killer.
I was getting a coffee, too.
Okay, but you decided
I was
to...
getting a coffee,
Okay,
too.
you don't have to shout at me as well. We can have a civilized conversation. I want...
What do you mean? What do you mean you can have a civilized conversation? Look who you invited on. You know what Meemaw used to tell me? She said, Dilly boy, you can't make sense of nonsense. And that is what Piers is trying to do here. You can't do this. Piers, what are you talking about? We can have a civilized conversation. You see her walk through the front doors and you put her on TV. You are not looking for a civilized conversation.
I want to know seriously.
I'm very civil.
I wanted to know seriously why you did what you did and what you hope to gain by it.
Pierce fucking Morgan. You're asking too
Just for the
many
record,
questions.
my name is actually just Piers
What's
Morgan.
wrong with saying free Palestine? Pierce, can you say free Palestine for me?
I think-
Pierce, can you say free Palestine for me?
If you stop shouting, yeah.
I want you to say it.
Yes, I'm happy to say...
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not going to shout.
If you just...
Mr. Pierce Morgan,
If you just
please
keep
say
quiet,
free
I can answer your
Palestine.
question. Yes, I'm very happy to
I'm
say
never
that...
quiet, Pierce.
Sorry, you're still talking.
I'm never quiet.
Okay, but try.
I'm never
Otherwise,
quiet,
I can't.
Piers. I cannot
You asked me
shut
to do
up.
something. If you don't shut up, I can't give you the answer.
Oh, my God.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'll shut up for you.
I absolutely believe that Palestine should be free. Yes.
Oh, okay. And how are we going to do that, Pierce? Give us the answers, Piers Morgan. Give us the fucking answers.
Yeah,
How are we
What
gonna...
is the what is the purpose of this performance? Just what, this is too abstract for me. This just feels like if I want to get this experience, I could just turn on, like, go into like darker P on Gary's mod, turn on the voice chat, stand on a street corner, and I can get this experience doubled and tripling up on the racial slur element, and like boom, I've got the same thing. Like what? Why does this need to be put on national TV? What's the purpose of this? At some point, like, by continuing to have her on the show, it is not it's not an endorsement of what she's doing or what she's saying necessarily, but it's like you're continuing to enable this. Why? Is it just for viewership? Does this get high viewership? Do people turn on their TV, see this, and they're like, "Oh, let me sit back and listen"?
Palestine free.
Yeah. If it was as simple
How
as
are we
me,
going to do it?
if it was as simple as me just giving a simple answer now, it would have been done by now. It's a very complicated issue. But let me ask you again. Why? Let me ask you.
Evans88 has donated $10.
Hey,
Dylan fucking Burns. Can you say free milkshake for me?
free milkshake? I will not say free milkshake. I will not. I will not be pressured to say free milkshake. Can you do something for me? Okay. Thank you for the $10. I appreciate it. Which other people could also give at DylanBurns.tv at my website. Donations and subs are appreciated as we're still demonetized on YouTube. Also, if you're on YouTube, you can also hit that like button. Costs you nothing. And hey, if I'm demonetized, I can still farm the likes. I just can't farm the dollars. What was I gonna say? I forget.
Again, seriously, why did you do what you did to Alec Baldwin, and what did you hope to achieve?
Alec Baldwin, look at me. Pierce, honestly. Pierce, look at my body. Look at this. Look at me. Pierce, I was maimed by a white man.
Listen, I understand you're a performative artist. I understand you're trying to make everybody laugh. You've made your joke about your terrible maiming.
Satellite, you're lashing me.
Right, okay, I'm not lashing you.
This is the third. This is the third white man to beat me this week.
Right.
Third white man. Yesterday, my white boyfriend beat the shit out of me. This is the third white man. Monday was Alec. The second day was another white man. Third day, Piers Morgan is beating me up on international TV. Oh my God. Piers, you're hurting me. Piers, you're really hurting me right now.
You see, here's my problem.
Hurting me.
Here's my problem with your performative art, Crackhead, is I don't see what...
Crackhead. Wouldn't it be? Wouldn't we go by the last name? Why are we on a first name basis? Wouldn't it be last name be more respectful, Piers? I think you should be more respectful towards your guest.
Here's my problem with your performative art, Crackhead, is I don't see what good you're doing the cause of Palestine. All you're doing is turning the whole war into a joke.
You're really hurting me. This war is not a joke.
Well, why are you making why are you making it such a mockery? Explain to me.
How am I making a mockery? How?
Because you're making it all about you and your silly pranks, and you're trying to have fun.
All of you are like
and actually, behind all this is a very serious war going on.
I'm always serious. I'm always serious. You're hurting me right now, Pierre.
Right.
Like you're hurting Fox and your kids.
Are you going to explain? Are you going to explain why you did what you did to Alec Baldwin or not?
I got hurt. I'm a victim. I'm a victim, Pierre. Like a fucking Zionist, I'm a victim. All of you. You're hurting me. Another white man.
Okay. You know, you see, the trouble with this performative art is it's not funny. You've got one gag that you've been maimed by Alec Baldwin, which you haven't. What you haven't explained to the audience, and I've given you the chance repeatedly, is why you did what you did and why you think what you're doing now does anything but make a mockery of all these people dying in Gaza. Because that's what you're doing.
Look, Piers, you're trying to spin this into some bullshit. I know exactly what you're doing, Piers.
No,
your tactics,
you are.
You're British,
You are.
You're fucking annoying. You eat tea and crumpets.
You're British. That's okay. That got me a little. It got me a little bit. But the problem is there's no way for her to pivot and defend herself from a serious basis. She's degraded herself to such a degree that there's no point where she can like turn this around and start making serious points to refute anything Piers saying. So all she's done is go on national TV, make an ass of herself, and basically became like Piers Morgan's punching bag. She can't, even if she wanted to defend herself at this point, nobody's gonna take her seriously.
You're doing, Piers.
No, you are.
You're British.
You are.
You're fucking annoying. You eat tea and crumpets. You have your pinky in the fucking air. You salute the queen. Fuck the crown. Fuck Buckingham Palace. Now I'm getting angry. Because, Piers, this is what you do.
Oh, now you're getting angry.
You set people up for shit.
Now you're getting angry.
Yeah, you set people up for shit. I know exactly what you do, Piers. I know exactly because I do it too, Piers.
Yeah.
And I have a fucking audience, Piers. You think you could set me up, Piers? Listen, Piers.
I think, you know what I think? I think you're frankly...
What? Say it, Piers.
I think, honestly, Crackhead, you are honestly pathetic.
Yes.
This is
And
one of the
you're calling
most
a black woman a
pathetic things I've ever had to...
You're calling a black woman a crackhead. Thank you, Miss Crackhead. Oh my goodness.
endure
And you're calling me a
in
crackhead.
the long, illustrious history of
You're calling a
uncensored.
black woman a crackhead.
I'm just imagining like that
That's your-
77-year-old like Bethy Dorman sitting in her little villa in the countryside in the UK, turning on TV, and this is what they see. Oh my, politics is really getting out of control. I wonder if this crackhead Barney is voting liberal this year.
Name on
Am I
your
a
Twitter
bigger bitch
feed.
than-
You call yourself
Am I a bigger
crackhead.
bitch than Megan? Pierce, am I a bigger bitch than Meghan Markle?
Are you going
Please,
to
I want
I'm going to give you a final chance. Are you going to actually answer the question of why you did what you did to Alec Baldwin?
No, Pierce, I have a question. Am I a bigger bitch than Meghan Markle? Because, you know, Buckingham Palace was complaining about the black girl, and I want to be that black girl.
Okay.
I want to be that black girl.
You know what, Crackhead? I tried to give you a hearing. You're not going to take it seriously. I actually think you're doing.
Try anything.
You may want to shout. Yeah, you may want to shout and scream at Alec Baldwin. All right. I think we've heard enough of Crackhead, to be honest with you. All right.
You know, I thought she made a compelling argument.
Let's bring in my panel. Streamer Hasan Piker,
panel.
Journalist Emily Austin, uncensored contributor.
Hello, Hasan.
Krakue, and podcaster James Barr.
Dog, I wish they did this as a tag team debate and didn't tell Hasan, and it was just like some two pro-Israel people, Hasan, and then this crackhead Barney, just paired up with Hasan. Oh my gosh! I mean, if we're gonna make this a joke, might as well just lean into it. Try to get as much value out of it as we can.
Well, Emily, I mean, on one level, I guess it was quite funny, but on another level, I didn't like what she did to Alec Baldwin. I've got no truck for Alec Baldwin whatsoever. And I think with this case that he's got hanging over him, I hope that justice is served, because ultimately he did fire the gun that killed that poor woman.
I don't want to get into the ethics of this right now, but I mean, like, the armorer is the one that's getting slapped with the stuff because they weren't the one that checked the gun. I don't want to revisit the case, but I mean, I think just outwardly saying justice served as Alec Baldwin in prison because he murdered her. I mean, I don't know. Is that the culture that we had around guns on? You know, I don't want to. It's a totally different topic. Totally different topic.
And has been on some kind of weird PR tour ever since. But I don't like to see any public figure, whether it's Eric Adams, the mayor, on a plane, or Alec Baldwin getting a coffee, harangued and harassed in that manner. Now, I tried to conduct a serious interview. She obviously wasn't interested in doing that, wanted to turn the whole thing into a foul-mouthed rant and joke and performative thing. Fine. That's entirely her right to do it. But what did you think of these harassings, not just by her, but by other people, of public figures?
You tried to conduct a serious interview with Crackhead Barbie?
Well, no, I was asking her about a viral video of her harassing Alec Baldwin, which I do actually think is a serious thing. I do actually think public figures should not be harassed in that manner. I've had a bit of it myself, and I think it crosses a line. Right, and Alec Baldwin, you know, as far as I'm aware, has not said anything particularly sensational about the war at all. So why she is harassing him in the street in the way that she did, I think is worthy of examination. Wow. Now, as it turned out, she had no interest in having a serious conversation. Okay, so we've cut it off. But I don't think I should...
No, I'm sorry. Reel this in, okay? When I was hosting Hippy Dippy at its most comical, I didn't pretend... Like I said, like, oh, we can have productive conversations, but yeah, sometimes it goes off the rails for entertainment. You admit it. Don't be like, oh, and then I started the conversation and I found out that there was no serious element to it. She sat down with Band-Aids over her nipples, her top up, her boobs out, in a diaper, covered in baby powder, like big red lips from like overdoing the lipstick purposefully, a big blonde wig, frazzled to all to no comparison, while like half crippled. Like, come on. There's not like, oh yes, we're gonna talk about the economy now. Please tell me, what do you think about the Fed's recent decision making? Like, no, get out of here. Don't pretend you thought it was gonna be anything else.
Blamed for getting on someone who is literally at the center of a quite big news story in America for harassing a famous star. Do you, Hasan?
No, it was for clout. She was doing it for clout. That's why she went on the show, also for clout, which you were correct on, pointing out that using the ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and what's happening to the Palestinian people as a vehicle to create more social clout for yourself, social capital for yourself is pretty disingenuous, pretty messed up.
I have to jump in there, though, because isn't that what everybody's doing? Isn't that what this show is also doing? Because you're talking about create political clout, create noise,
I'll come back
to get clicks, to make money.
Listen, let's not all be disingenuous,
no,
right?
But the whole conversation, and actually Crackhead Barney isn't that different to you. Well, actually, and Crackhead Barney said it herself. She said, we're no different. And I kind of agree with Crackhead Barney. I didn't think I'd say it.
If you think there's any correlation between what she just did on the show...
Someone screaming over someone and not letting them speak. week.
Right.
There's definitely a correlation.
Well, you think
there.
that I've treated...
Maybe Piers Morgan was the real crackhead all along.
Do you like she treated
No,
Ali
I'm
Baldwin?
just saying that I think that actually you aren't that different. You're trying to do the same thing.
I'll come back to that.
You're just doing it in a different way.
No, it's a preposterous suggestion. I do not do what she does, right? But Hasan, here's the point I would make to you. A lot of people think a lot of these protesters at universities in America are performative. The ones who are chanting their support for Hamas, the ones who are chanting about intifada and pretending it's not about a violent uprising. I mean, do you accept that a lot of that is not only performative, but public demonstration of support for terrorism?
Absolutely not. I don't think that. I mean, all protests are technically performative, obviously, but there's a very clear-cut goal for the group of students at Columbia and many other universities. I was in Melbourne not that long ago, and I attended a Palestinian protest there, a Palestinian rally there, and the students there were also demanding the exact same thing, that they divest, their colleges divest from a lot of the companies that are aligned with the state of Israel, a lot of the companies that are directly involved in operations in the West Bank, a lot of the companies that are playing a role in the regular maintenance of the apartheid regime of Israel and helping Israel conduct an ethnic cleansing campaign. That is the ultimate goal. That is why they're trying to very clearly cause a little bit of a disruption and engage in.
But are you comfortable? Okay, but are you comfortable,
the most American thing you can do?
Are you comfortable with the ones who are seen chanting support for Hamas or chanting about intifada?
I am perfectly comfortable with people chanting about the intifada. As far as the Hamas thing goes, any kind of protest is always going to have a litany of random people, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. You have to look at the actual tangible goals that the protest movement is stating they're interested in. And I think that those goals, and I think you will agree with me on this, Piers, I think those goals are pretty valid overall. I think that they want to...
I mean, like, I think a lot of them are valid. Maybe not necessarily all of them. I think some of them are valid at least. But I don't know how achievable they are. I was looking at some of them and they included stuff like right to return. I don't know how we ever put that on the... Like, are we telling the university to take a public stance in favor of right to return? Is that what they expect it to happen? I mean, asking them to divest from Israel is already a very, very high request, which I don't think is going to be fulfilled. But, like, I mean, if somebody has a full list, we can go check it out. I just don't know if it's plausible from the university's perspective. That doesn't mean necessarily that the protest movement is not meaningful in any way. You can attempt to go for something that you know you will not achieve, but maybe you can normalize the struggle for said thing. But it's just, I don't know if it's really achievable or plausible.
2-1.
I have to go back and check the demands, because I think they released I think SDS released an expanded demand list.
Recenter the attention to the genocide that is ongoing in Gaza, and 2, demand that their tuition dollars do not go to operations in Israel. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a campus. There's going to be a sister campus that is being built in Tel Aviv right now for Columbia University. This means that Columbia University, which once housed the likes of the late great Edward Said and many others, and that currently has many Palestinian students who pay tuition for projects such as this one, will not be able to go to that sister campus. I find that abhorrent, but it's everyday existence in Israel.
Let me bring in Emily. You've been listening to all this. Your response?
With all due respect, Hasan, why do you feel that Columbia, or any college for that matter, owes you to divest from Israel? Why do you think your opinion is correct? Because so far, I heard the classic buzz.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it owes Hasan specifically. I think it'd be a question of the people who pay tuition. It'd be a question of the sponsors of the university. That, for example, if the people who are paying for the university don't want the university to be involved in a country that's doing horrific actions or doing actions that they don't like, then that would be what they're asking for. I don't know if Hasan specifically has right demanded as a non-tuition paying university member, but there are people in the university making those demands. I think that would be where it would be coming from.
Buzzwords.
I don't know. I think that might not have been a rhetorical question, and I'm answering a non-rhetorical question. This is a great freeze frame.
Apartheid, discriminatory, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, which is funny because it's all the exact opposite. So if I may ask you, what about Israel is apartheid? You also just said the students in Israel
Now, I mean, there's not any apartheid like there was in South Africa, but when we talk about different people living governed by the same police forces and laws, well, governed by the same police forces and military forces, but not necessarily having the same laws. I think when it comes to like traveling through checkpoints through certain areas, not being able to enter other areas, like there is questions about a different set of laws for different people living under the same general entity. Like that is a problem under occupation. You can call it apartheid, call it what you want. I don't really want to play the name game, but it's a state of affairs that is not sustainable when it comes to peaceful relationships between these two peoples.
Canvas in Israel would not allow Palestinians to join. Are you confused, or do you know nothing about the country of Israel? Because let me remind you, Jews are not allowed in the West Bank and Gaza. However, Arabs have full Israeli citizenship, have the rights, are members of the Knesset, which is the equivalent of, you can think of Congress, and even prosecuted a former Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, an Arab judge. So what apartheid exactly are you speaking about? What genocide? What ethnic cleansing? And secondly, how dare you say it's okay to talk about an intifada? Let me remind you, the intifada, last time it happened in Israel, consisted of thousands of people dying in bus bombings. So are you saying that you support terrorism and killing innocent people?
Well, intifada simply just means revolution, and I'm an American, and in 1776,
violent
we did
revolution.
one of those, and it was pretty fucking good. Yeah. What do you think? The American?
Okay,
do you think the American Revolution was a tickle party? Of course not.
We also bombed Hiroshima.
Don't. Yeah, I know, and that was also unjust.
I feel like I think the American Revolution and the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima, I feel like we're in very different types of violence, causes for violence, like a revolution versus a war with another nation state that attacked you first, and I don't know. These are not apt comparisons. I don't think anyone's learning from you just throwing different. What about Hiroshima? Oh, what about 9/11? What about like? I don't think anyone's learning from you throwing these two historical examples at each other. They're not comparable, I don't think.
And unimaginably cruel. But of course, the Israel Defender is also defending nuking civilians and killing them by the hundreds of thousands. Now listen,
so when it fits your narrative, it's justified. But when it goes against it,
refocus the conversation to the points that you made. Let's refocus the conversation to the points.
The base thing Hasan could say here, okay, well, not necessarily the base thing, but the broad-chested move here, okay, wide-shouldered behavior would just be like, yeah, when you fight for good things, violence is more okay. When you fight for bad things, violence is not okay. But certain types of violence is never okay. Like that would be the just. Yeah, certain. If you're fighting for freedom, good. If you're fighting against freedom, bad. Like, and then you can try to argue that, but.
Okay, look, you said, just to remind everybody, I'm actually moderating this, but that's an interesting point that Emily just raised, Hasan. It does seem that you're very selective about the violence that you support. That when you support it, it's justified. When other people use things in a violent way that you don't support, it's unjustified. Seems like it's all skewed to what Hasan Piker thinks.
Well, not necessarily just what I think. I think that there are obvious markers, obvious boundaries. I don't think violence against civilians is justified. I have talked about October 7 on this very same show, saying that it was a tragedy. It was atrocities that occurred on October 7 specifically. When you target civilians in any capacity, I think that that is unacceptable. However, this does not mean that violence will not occur in many circumstances. Violence has occurred in every single revolutionary action, many good revolutionary actions. Obviously, America bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with an atom bomb, that was not a very good
Hamas did on
moment
October
for
the 7th.
anybody. It was not a very good moment for human civilization at all.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th? Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an example of what you would call a justified revolution?
I don't look at every single act of violence. I look at
You've literally just been reciting a whole load of them.
Systems of oppression.
Why are you avoiding October the 7th?
You do it too.
I don't know. I mean, that shouldn't be like, you could say that the attacks on civilians were not justified, but that doesn't mean physical resistance in itself is not justifiable. Like, he could answer that specifically. Attacks on civilians during October 7th, of course, is not justified, but any occupied people, if occupied with no peaceful way to accession, he could find some argument here. I don't know why he needs to dodge this. From his perspective, he could craft an argument Don't know why it has to be avoided. I guess he wants to like bring in the broader perspective to move it outside of October 7th, since most of these conversations start with October 7th, which is a good jumping off point. They do seem to, it doesn't sometimes include the stuff that happened before October 7th, and a lot of times it dominates like half the conversation when there's been months and months of fighting since then.
No, I don't.
I'm not avoiding it. I've talked about it a million times over.
Let me ask you one more time.
This is not what we're here to discuss.
Emily, hang on.
This is not what we're here to
Hasan,
discuss.
let me just ask you directly one more time. Let me ask you one more time. Do you believe what happened on October the 7th was a justified act of revolution? Yes or no?
I do not, and I do think that. Oh, wait, hold on. That's let me clarify. Let me clarify something very important here. Events that unfolded on October 7th.
By the way, let me just throw out there, I love the account in Gutter Chat called Dylan the Shill that was created 3 minutes ago and is also just so happens to be following as of 3 minutes ago. I love the organic growth that this channel is experiencing. It's really positive to see.
Were atrocities. That much is clear. Those atrocities could have been avoided if Israel was not an apartheid regime. Israel has been an apartheid regime for 75 years.
Can you answer how Israel's an apartheid regime?
In the
because
early,
you keep repeating that.
No, you can't just chime in. You can't just chime in. You ask me a question. You want it?
Why
you ask me a question. I'm going to give you an answer.
Because you're repeating
Israel
these lies.
has been an apartheid regime since
please.
its inception. Until 1967, Israel was an apartheid regime for the Palestinian citizens of Israel, the Arabs, as you called them. There was a two-tier criminal justice system. They were subjected to military court processes and not the civil court processes until 1967. After 1967, they got citizenship. There are obviously still many different social issues.
Dylan the Shill? Today I'm in the mood for Shill and the Dill.
Hey, thank you for the $5.
Issues that pertain to the Palestinian citizens of Israel, the Arabs that are living in Israel, those who are not Jewish, of course. However, Israel currently is occupying the West Bank. There are more than 2 million Palestinians that live in the West Bank. Israel's illegally occupying the West Bank. There are checkpoints. There are license plates that restrict Palestinian travel. The Israeli operations in the West Bank have destroyed Palestinian statehood. Now, of course, all of this is readily available for those who want to learn about it, yourself included. I hope you look it up.
When he says that it's destroyed Palestinian statehood, I imagine he means like the concept or like the building blocks for Palestinian statehood, because there hasn't been a Palestinian state. There has not been one. There's been things like that have been like a Palestinian state, like the authority in the West Bank, which has a kind of representation in the UN, even if it's non-voting. But I assume what he means is the foundations for a future Palestinian state.
Israeli operations in the West Bank have destroyed Palestinian statehood. Now, of course, all of this is readily available for those who want to learn about it, yourself included. I hope you look it up. B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights organization which declared Israel to be an apartheid regime in 2021, in the April of 2021. Amnesty International declared Israel to be an apartheid regime.
Let me, before I move, hang on. Before I just want to bring in our two British panelists here, but just finally, just to clarify, Hasan, I can't quite work out whether you said you do think October the 7th was an unjustified act of revolution or whether you changed your mind. So can you clarify?
I think that violent means of maintaining an apartheid is inevitably going to yield.
Hey, Radical AC, thanks for the primer. Appreciate it.
25 has donated $5.
Hey.
I don't know if you got the news, but the Arizona State House just passed a bill to repeal the 1864 abortion ban.
Hey, that's good. That's good. It should be signed by the governor then, unless the governor wants to destroy their political career.
Pipuro has donated $10. This money is to be put towards a nuclear bomb for Ukraine.
I will make sure it gets to the right people. I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. Thank you for trusting me with this investment.
I think that violent means of maintaining an apartheid is inevitably going to yield violent retaliation.
So was it justified?
Something that is completely avoidable.
Was it justified?
civilian deaths are never justified.
You know what, Hasan?
Hang on, Emily. Hang on, Emily.
You look hurt,
Emily, let me...
Poland.
Wait, when he says like civilian deaths, does he mean civilian targeting or just the concept of civilians dying in war? Like I like civilian dying in war is not ever okay, but civilians dying in war is an inevitability of at least modern war and every war up to this point, even if it is quite literally collateral damage and completely accidental in nature, or maybe not accidental, but not the direct goal of the military strikes in question. But I mean, there could be strikes that could be justified from a military perspective. For example, at the night strike on the Kerch Bridge from the Ukrainian perspective is 100% justifiable from a military perspective. Hasan said it's a terrorist attack. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But it is justifiable from a military perspective. You're targeting the logistic veins of the Russian army. Even if civilians also happen to use said bridge, attacking it during the nighttime when it's going to have the least amount of usage seems to be a way of trying to make sure that the strike is following the laws of proportionality. But if civilians were to die in those strikes, was it justifiable to kill those civilians? No. Was the strike justifiable from a military perspective, from like a international warfare laws of war perspective? Well, that's a different question. But I don't know what he means by justifiable. I agree with the general basic premise that civilians dying in war is bad, but I don't know what he means by like justifiable. Maybe I'm thinking too much. I think I'm overthinking it.
His mother in the eyes. No, you look this person's mother in the eyes and you tell him that this was justified. You tell him his arm being blown off and being held in captivity for 200 days is justified.
I do love that the Israel defender has no capacity to fucking hear anything I'm saying.
Palestinians who are made of identity.
It just... If you're not going to respect me and
think
listen
that
to what
we're
I have to
occupying
say,
the West
which, by the way,
Bank?
of course you
we'd
don't
occupied
respect.
Gaza.
Oh, if you talk
Look
over each other,
happened.
nobody can hear you. I just want to give...
I think it's not I think. It's not I think. It's the entire world knows.
No, it is you think.
Hang on, Emily, please.
Your narrative.
Let me handle this, Emily. Hasan, just before I come to the two people who are with me here, I just need some clarity here, because it seems like you're dancing around whether you think October the 7th was justified or not.
Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this back and forth masturbation? I've already given you my fucking
Piers,
position.
Why are you doing this?
I'm
He's
sick
happy.
and tired
It's
of repeating it over and over again.
Okay,
because
I just
it's okay.
ask this
Emily,
demon next to me. Wearing a fucking IDF dog
pointed
tag.
the wrong way.
Please stop shouting at each other.
Wearing an IDF dog tag if she actually thinks Israel's actions are justifiable.
Bring them home.
Do you
it's
see
to
me
bring the
rocking
hostages
the fucking...
home. The hostages that you rightly believe belong in the tunnels of Gaza.
I'm going to give you...
The hostages that you believe belong in the tunnels of Gaza. This has just gone like straight into ad hominem and assuming of people's positions, and Hasan has lost it. He's no longer cooled head. And I mean, the topic is serious, but the person he's talking to, I mean, you can't let these types of people get under your skin with their hyperbolic, like, just fiery rhetoric. It's meant to get under your skin. It's meant to drag you into the mud with them. I mean, if Hasan wanted to, I mean, he could keep his cool here and just kind of, I mean, I don't know if he's skilled enough to do this, but I would hope he would be, to argue his position while keeping a cool head as she flips out and says, you just want all the Jews to die. And he'd be like, I've never said that. I'm advocating for an end to the occupation. And he could do quite well here, but I don't know. He's not keeping his temper well. The two people on the right kind of just seem done with this.
You two, I'm going to let you two calm down. It's pointless. We cannot hear you when you talk over each other.
Troll people.
Every time.
Is that an IDF dog tag? What does an IDF dog tag look like? IDF dog tag. Yeah, it does look like a IDF dog tag. It looks just like an IDF dog tag. Yep. Leaf design, bring them home now. IDF Israel military style dog tag necklace. Okay, so this is what it is. It's like a message to bring them home, but it's in the style of an IDF dog tag.
Recently, I had someone from both sides on, like, it goes like this.
I'm wearing this rusty necklace.
Please, can you listen to me, Emily?
Civilians in Gaza right now.
Can you stop doing this to each other, please? Nobody can understand a word either of you are saying. Now, let me come to Esther and James here. This is one of my problems.
No, I want to hear if Emily condemns the actions of
Hasan,
Israel.
please let me moderate the debate.
Why do you ask her about 30,000 people?
I've got two panelists here who've not had a word yet.
Exactly, because you're a fucking terrorist.
Please stop talking.
You're a terrorist.
And I think you're a terrorist.
And you're a terrorist. They're both terrorists.
Okay, well, I'm not the one wearing...
How about we just put them both in a room and let them terrorize each other? How about that?
I'm not the one wearing
are home. Don't expect the war to be over.
Yeah, I know.
Bring
you don't
them
care about the
home.
hostages. If you
I
cared
love
about the
how
hostages,
you're condemning
you would
me.
be
You are
screaming at
exposing
Benjamin Netanyahu.
your own terrorism
Benjamin
on live
Netanyahu
television.
is the hostage
you
killer.
You are exposing... You know,
Benjamin Netanyahu has killed more hostages than Hamas.
What do I think you're achieving here?
Talking about?
Okay, I hold that back. Why? How could you say that? Wait, how could Hasan say that confidently? I think we have a record of 3 hostages, 2 or 3 hostages that have been killed by the IDF that we know for sure has been killed by the IDF. Hamas claims more, but we know of 2 to 3 that for sure have been, because they were high-profile incidents of them getting shot, some of which even flying white flags, which is a wild story. If they're shooting their own hostages flying white flags, what does that say about the general conduct of the Israeli military? I don't know. I don't want to extrapolate from one interaction, but oof, pretty bad. But how can we say that about all the hostages? I mean, how many did they badly wound, take during the initial attack, and then died in their custody? Would they not count of hostages they killed? What about the hostages that have died within their storage? What about hostages that might have been stored with weapons and have been blown up? And we don't... The point is, Hasan could not possibly have access to that information.
And not only oppressing the Palestinian people, but for spreading terrorism. I don't see your outrage at Hamas. Israel gave Gaza back in 2005,
I would like to, please.
And Hamas has turned this into a terrorist haven.
Emily and Hasan, can you please show some courtesy to the other panelists?
Evil in comparison to Israel.
Can you please stop talking, both of you? And the other
Hamas is the lesser evil in comparison to Israel. Kind of like, when people would that be under the assumption when people say this, like when people compare nation states and like which one's more evil, do they compare it based on what they believe or based on what they've done? Because if somebody, for example, if somebody wants to be like a Hitler, are they as evil as Hitler, or is Hitler worse because he actually got to do it? And when judging that, when you're judging like nation states or political powers and like how they behave, and like how evil they are, which I don't think is necessarily the best measurement in how to judge states and statecraft. But if that's the measure we're using, we're just judging them by how evil they are, then isn't there a question of like, if Hamas was as powerful as Israel and believed what what Hamas believes now, what type of damage would they be doing in comparison? And would they then, in that circumstances, be worse, better than the Israeli government? It's hard to compare the evil of 2 forces when the power dispersion is so different. Like if you're comparing America and the Taliban, like the Taliban is horrible to women, horrible to minorities, horrible to not only like religious minorities and like sexual minorities, but also like other tribes that they've murdered, and in some instances even engaged in something that could be described just as straight up like ethnic cleansing, like really bad, terrible behavior way before America invaded the country. Now, if you were to give them the same power as the United States, would they be doing a lot more damage? It's hard to compare, but either way, I don't think we need to be doing this comparison. Like, is Hamas or Netanyahu's government more evil? Let's measure.
You panelists have a
You want
say.
a soundbite, Pierce? I'll give you a
them some
soundbite.
courtesy. Please.
I take the very radical position that I think Netanyahu and Hamas are bad. Give me applause. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be on MSNBC all week.
Please, some courtesy for your co-panelists here. Now, Esther, this is one of the problems I have with this whole debate.
Hot tip, it's never good to get into a debate with the organizer of a panel or debate. It just makes it look like that you can't play by the rules, even if it isn't your fault. You have to do really good or really catch the moderator messing up for that to not look bad.
Increasingly, it just descends into a screaming match between pro-Palestinians and pro-Israelis.
And the biggest losers are the victims of this war. 33,000 dead Palestinians, over 1,500 dead Israelis. These are the biggest victims of this, because you're shouting at each other and nothing is getting, like, you're completely, forget having no courtesy for us, you're completely disrespecting actual victims of this conflict, which, by the way, didn't happen in a vacuum. And I think that's the most important thing to say about this. None of this happened in a vacuum. Of course, October the 7th was an atrocity, and it was completely...
It's a much better, like, why could, see, if Hasan just said earlier, like, of course, the killing of civilians on October 7th wasn't justified. And he could even focused it more specifically so he could avoid the concept of, like, Hamas fighting the IDF directly if he wanted to. So he still wanted to leave an avenue for violent resistance. But it's not in a vacuum. I think she made the point. It's clearer.
Unjustified. There was no justification for butchering people in the way that they did, but it didn't happen in a vacuum.
I understand much of this is a a performance to like please the crowd, but when you ask a question, I think it's best, even if you were like, oh, I've been asked this question so many times, I want to focus on the real issues. It's better to answer it quickly and move on to what you want to talk about.
People that live in Gaza weren't even born at the time that Hamas came in power. So I really just I despise this. You're a terrorist sympathizer. You're a genocide supporter. All of this, when really the people that we should be talking about deserve better.
Okay, James. On the wider point of these protests,
well, I couldn't get to that part because I wanted to describe what the apartheid is, and Emily cut in immediately to chirp about some random shit.
Okay, you were both abusing each other. It was very unsatisfying.
It was very
let me ask James. James, on the protests.
Yeah, dude.
On the protests, look, I believe in the right to protest. That's an absolute bedrock of any democracy. But I don't believe in the right to support terror groups publicly, or to chant about support for Hamas, or to chant about Intifada, which is a violent uprising.
Am I really that much of a free speech radical that I'm actually thinking, like, should you be allowed? I mean, it depends. Like, I mean, a terrorist group, I guess, like government designated terrorist groups, because that would have to be the measure by the law, right? If the government designates a terror group, then you can't support it. So would that mean that, like, for example, if someone wanted to go out and march for the PKK or one of these groups, would they get arrested? Is that how it would work? I don't even know how I feel about that, honestly. I mean, if it's an organization we're at war with, and we have good reason that the organization is like doing collaboration and stuff like that, like when we talk about the German-American Bund, like that's pretty understandable, shutting that down once the war starts, right? Or the Silver Legion, which we also shut down at the start of World War II, another American fascist organization. But just, I'm not saying go support terrorist organizations. I'm actually divided on such a thing, because like, I don't like the idea of the government being like, that's a terrorist group now, no one's allowed to even verbalize support. Now, if you were going out and verbalizing calls to action, calls to violence, that'd be one thing. But verbalizing in support for an organization that your government deems a terrorist group, I mean, that always depends on what the government ends up designating a terrorist group. So I'm a little bit more divided on that than I think Piers is. Maybe I'm taking the silly freedom position of a typical American. Would you apply the same to Al Qaeda or ISIS? Honestly, probably. I'd have to if I wanted to be consistent. Now, that doesn't mean you don't absolutely humiliate these people. That doesn't mean you don't pelt them with eggs when they protest. That doesn't mean that you don't you don't monitor them if you have any reason to believe that they might actually be engaging in terrorist activity, and you don't infiltrate their organizations from top to bottom. I think, but of course, all of that changes once they establish like official ties with terrorist groups, and you can argue that they're financing terrorist groups and funneling people to terrorist groups, because then the conversation is different. Then they're directly financing terrorism. There's a different set of laws.
Where's the line for you with these?
I agree. I think we have to condemn.
Because if that was the case, if I didn't hold that standard, then we'd have to go out and like whatever. I don't want to get too into this rabbit hole. I'll sit on this idea, think about it more, but my immediate reflection was like, do we ban that speech? I don't know. If it's not a direct call for violence, I'm divided.
What Hamas did, and I don't think the words that have been used so far have been strong enough. I mean, it was the worst thing we've seen in a very long time. It was disgusting, appalling, awful for everyone involved. I also have a lot of sympathy, if not, I can't think of a bigger word, for the people of Gaza. It's awful, and I will agree with you. I do want a free Palestine, and I also want a free and successful Israel, but I don't want innocent people murdered. So yeah, you can't go to a protest and start shouting about support for Hamas.
I think there could be an argument, for example, like I think a lot of this would I think you could outlaw stuff like recruitment for organizations like this. Probably already is illegal. And if recruitment is that, if you're like going online, like trying to direct people to join ISIS, like there's probably like so many different laws by being somebody who's just in the pro-ISIS camp that you're going to get caught up in, that I don't even know if it would even be necessary to specifically ban endorsing or saying these groups are cool.
I do want a free Palestine, and I also want...
Like, I don't think it's illegal in the United States either, because, I mean, I know that the PFLP is designated a terrorist organization. Bad Bunny was on Twitch, like going like, yay, PFLP, yes, support them, I'd be with them fighting in the streets if they called for me. And then she got banned from Twitch because you can't support that on Twitch, but she never got arrested or anything because it's not illegal.
a free and successful Israel, but I don't want innocent people murdered. So yeah, you can't go to a protest and start shouting about support for Hamas. That's insane.
Isn't it ironic that something like this has become a haven for like the mentally unwell? You're talking about something as serious as a conflict in Israel and Gaza, and for some reason you have really uneducated people that are clearly 20 years ago would have been in an asylum.
Look, honestly, I don't know if she's talking about Hasan, but because of how what the conversation did just shifted from, and the fact that she was complaining about that exact type of dialogue, it does feel like she's talking about the two people on the left, Hasan and the woman with the dog tag. So I mean, I don't even know if it's directed at him, but it still feels like vaguely directed in his he's just catching all of the Vegas strays.
Supporting this openly, not even knowing the conflict, not even knowing the context of what they're supporting, and for some reason we even give it airtime. That's what upsets me. These people don't deserve airtime. Right?
Everyone is so.
You can even see it in Hasan's face. I'm not saying this out of nowhere. I feel like he's feeling it, like directed at him in a way too. I feel like he's feeling the negative waves being directed towards him.
Triggered on both sides, on all sides, and rightly so, because a lot of terrible stuff has happened. So that's where the emotion is coming from. But really, I think we all want the same thing, and that is for innocent people to not be murdered or slain in the streets.
Right. I mean, look, Hasan. Hang on, Emily. Please, I'll come to you. Let me just ask Hasan. When you and Emily go at each other like you just did, nobody wins. I mean, no one can really understand.
See, Emily knows how to just be like, okay, and back up a lot better than Hasan does, okay? I don't want to use the word better trained because it sounds like I'm talking about her like she's a dog. But like she's better media trained, I guess would be the word. Okay, I could have said that very easily without referencing that. And now that I've referenced that, it sounds like I am talking about her that way. Canceled immediately, deplatform me from everything. But she seems more well media trained on how to do these appearances. And I mean, she's going through all the talking points like super quick. I think this is like her bread and butter probably. I don't know much about her, but I'd assume that she probably runs through these talking points and media appearances quite regularly.
When you and Emily go at each other like you just did, nobody wins. I mean, no one can really understand a word you're saying because you're shouting over each other. You end up just calling each other terrorists. There's no sensible dialogue here. There's no constructive conversation. It's just two implacably opposed sides abusing each other. Do you understand that?
The word is disciplined? Yeah, that could also apply to a dog. Okay, I'm done. Moving on. Yes, disciplined would be a good word.
Yeah, listen, Piers, okay? This is going to always be a very heated discussion, okay? Having a conversation about how heated this discussion is utterly unproductive.
That's also pretty true. I mean, if it becomes like the state of like Crackhead Barney is dominating conversation, then I think you have to at least reference it. And there is a usefulness to telling people to tamp down rhetoric when it gets to a level of, you know, openly being like, yay, this terror group, or be like, you're a terrorist, you're a terrorist. Like, I do think when it gets to that level, like all the productivity falls out of the room. But like a conversation like this is always going to be heated to some extent. If the conversation is between Hasan and somebody wearing an IDF dog tag, or at least a representation in an IDF dog tag, there's no way to have the conversation without it being heated. I do think you can have that conversation without going into ad hominem attacks, though.
Every single moment that we
feel like such a debate lord. Ad hominem
use on air, not talking about every single university building being desecrated, destroyed. The fact that we're having this conversation on the eve of hundreds of mass graves.
Then again, would I avoid an ad hominem attack if I was talking to like Scott Ritter? No, I'd mention the fact of his criminal history. And there's probably at some point I'd mention it, throw it out there, depending on how heated the conversation got. Man, I don't want to throw stones from within glass houses. I'm trying to think, if I was in Hasan's shoes, how would I perform? How would I act? I don't think I'd yell over the host to let me speak. I think that's something I could hold myself back from doing. I don't know if I'd call the other person a terrorist either.
Being unearthed right now in many different parts of Gaza around hospitals that Israel had laid siege to is disgusting. I agree. I came on here, as I have done last time.
I might call Scott Ritter a demon. I think I might call him a demon.
As well, and as I will probably do in the future as well, with one simple goal in mind, which is to address all of the misinformation that surround stuff like this. As far as the crackhead Barbie thing goes, yeah, she's a random TikTok influencer who gives a shit about what she has to say.
By the way, I've seen Crackhead Barney before in DC events. I live in the DC area, so like, well, not right now, I'm in Ukraine, but when I'm in America, I live in the DC area, so I saw it at a few protests. I never interacted with her because I'm just not, I didn't want to be a part of whatever that was.
She's obviously doing it for clout, but the students over at Columbia.
I think Vice did a documentary about her, though, if you guys wanted to learn more.
Students that I have talked to at the Columbia University Apartheid Divest group, the students that I've talked to from Jewish Voice for Peace.
All right, Emily, let me just ask you the same thing I asked Hasan. When you guys scream at each other and call each other terrorists, it doesn't obviously achieve anything other than it becomes unintelligible.
No, it achieves something. Piers Morgan's show goes up the ratings. That's what it achieves. The same reason he had Crackhead Barney on. But again, like, I'm a big wrestling fan, and some people think like the best way to get wrestling attention is just to go crazier and crazier. But at a certain point, it becomes so nonsensical, so ridiculous, so grotesque that you just want to turn off the TV, right? Like you can like have a crazy freak show where like has so many terrible, horrible things or like crazy things to look at, but at a certain point, it's more of a disgust reaction instead of a, oh my gosh, I can't stop watching reaction. And when Crackhead Barney started putting stuff in her mouth and it spilled everywhere, it was starting to get that point for me, honestly.
The audience, you know, is there not a better way we can have this conversation?
Funnily enough, correct. And funnily enough, I have the same exact answer as Hasan. My job here is to make sure that I'm debunking false narratives that Hasan is clearly spewing. My job here is to call out hypocrisy. And I just saw another one where he's saying that Crackhead Barney, whoever the hell that girl was, is a lunatic, but Aaron...
Hey, look, CTV, don't compare that to CTV. CTV didn't do nipple pasties, okay? CTV didn't wear a diaper, as far as I know. CTV wasn't, like, spilling food out of his mouth. CTV only passed out once drunk on stream, okay? Which I think is good manners, considering the guy. You know? Cool dude. Not comparable.
My job here is to make sure that I'm debunking false narratives that Hasan is clearly spewing. My job here is to call out hypocrisy. And I just saw another one where he's saying that Crackhead Barney, whoever the hell that girl was...
Not a cool dude. I mean, cool dude in, like, the way of, like... man, I have different standards for my conservative friends versus my liberal friends because I try... Whatever, I don't want to get into it. Let's watch.
Debunking false narratives that Hasan is clearly spewing. My job here is to call out hypocrisy. And I just saw another one where he's saying that Crackhead Barney, whoever the hell that girl was, is a lunatic, but Aaron Bushnell, who lights himself on fire, is a hero. You can't pick and choose whatever fits your narrative. And I keep on repeating that over and over again because the Palestinian movement will literally just take what they can get, spew all of the truth into their false narrative, spread misinformation, and then you say that we're the liars. You tell me I'm wearing an IDF dog tag. I'm wearing a bring them home for the hostages that you... No, it says bring them home.
You're using the hostages as a simple political tool to make propaganda in the West is quite disgusting. The protests that are happening in Israel right now are massive.
And those,
I don't know what she expected. That is supposed to look like an IDF dog tag. I don't know. She's like, oh, what do you mean IDF dog tag? Like if I had a Trump hat on and it was a Trump hat, but it just said "Make America Gay Again," and somebody from a distance was like, "Is that a Trump hat?" I was like, "Duh! How dare you!" When it's like literally made to look like a Trump hat.
And those protests,
what
you are using humans in captivity as a political tool. It's so obvious.
Why, Hasan? Why are you dehumanizing the hostages? Because I have no problem admitting the Palestinians deserve better.
Not.
I feel terrible.
You're using them as a political pawn.
I can say that.
If you cared about the hostages, you would be in Tel Aviv right now
using
alongside.
Let me bring in James. Let me bring in James, please.
I'm sorry that I can't.
Please, let me bring in James.
I agree with both of you.
Sorry, can you please, when I say stop talking, please stop talking. We've got 4 people here. James.
If anyone is using hostages, surely it's Hamas, Hasan. How can you say that? How can you use that argument? That's a crazy thing to say. It's Hamas
What do you mean, how can I use that
taken
argument?
these
There
people
are
from their homes,
tens of thousands of people in Israel. There are currently tens of thousands of Israeli citizens right now in the streets of Israel, in the streets of Tel Aviv, outside of Benjamin Netanyahu's house, protesting every single day. What are they protesting? They're protesting for Benjamin Netanyahu to facilitate a ceasefire with Hamas so that they can actually bring the hostages home. That is precisely the number one goal of the family members of the hostages.
Who is using the hostages?
And if anyone on this panel was being even a little bit honest, they would recognize the reality that, listen, just listen.
You didn't listen to my question.
Listen to what I'm saying, and you will understand, perhaps, what I'm trying to imply here.
That's very patronizing.
Utilizing the hostages. Yeah, I am being patronizing. I don't know who the fuck you are, and you're over here chirping all the way from fucking London about Palestine and doing a both sides are fucking fine type bullshit.
Palestine. Look at his face too on the right. Oh my God. Cable TV. Why did I ditch it?
You're talking about how you want to fucking free Palestine, but also simultaneously, both sides got a lot going on. Shut the fuck up. You don't know anything, okay? I don't give a shit about what your perspective is.
Honestly, like, it's funny. I think this will play great with Hasan's chat. I don't think it plays well on TV. Hasan been cussing like crazy too. I gotta stop cussing too. And I'm not saying like no cussing, but I just don't think it comes off well when I watch it back and I hear me cuss. It's like, what my Meemaw think, But I just don't think it comes off well. If I was on national TV, if I was the cuss, I'd want it to like really like pinpoint a particularly hard point. It would have to, it's supposed to be like a gigantic, like powerful, angry exclamation point. Like, damn, he just said that. And once you just like throw it out, like it loses all value, and you just come off as silly and uneducated and unprofessional and uncouth, like a man-child. And I have the same problem, but it's, dug its way into my vocabulary. I try to do it less, though.
I agree.
Hasan doesn't like what you have to say, so you're wrong. It's Hasan's way or the highway.
I mean, you are. There is no both sides on a genocide. Is there a both sides on a genocide? There is no both sides.
Well, the thing is, it's interesting you should mention the hostages.
What is in the Hamas charter? They want a Jewish genocide, but that's okay. But a Jewish genocide is okay.
If you're talking about the well-being of the if you're talking about the well-being of the hostages, what sense did it make for the IDF to flatten about 70% of Gaza? Because I completely agree. Bring the hostages home. If you look at Gaza, the topography of Gaza right now, it looks like a pancake. So I'm sorry, this whole argument of Hamas using them as human tools, fine, but
Hasan almost moaned there. He was very relieved that he felt like he just, what this felt like? This felt like you're in Helldivers, you're like low on health, you've been running around forever. You're about to get taken down, and you finally get the regen, call somebody else in to give you some fire support. Like, you just getting the buzzer at the last second, you get the support in. That's what they're like, finally, I'm going to get rotated out.
Of the hostages, what sense did it make for the IDF to flatten about 70% of Gaza? Because I completely agree. Bring the hostages home. If you look at Gaza, the topography of Gaza right now, it looks like a pancake. So I'm sorry, this whole argument of Hamas using them as human tools, fine, but the IDF has also been using it to continue that campaign. If you were told that, if God forbid, if your relative was one of the hostages and you saw what's happening right now, and I met someone whose mother is a hostage, and he said he didn't want his mother and her being taken to be used in the name of violence. Right now, he's sitting at home wondering, okay, what is the logic of trying to bring my mother home when you flattened Gaza? Please explain that to us.
So, can I pose a question? You might very well.
By the way, every time I watch one of these panels, every time I walk away with the conclusion, how could everyone ever, in the context of this, being seen as like, oh my gosh, this was the real conversations of where Palestine and Israel is happening. How could anyone ever drag Hippy Dippy through the mud in comparison? I'm just saying, like, oh, the Hippy Dippy debate panels, that was dumb Twitch debate bro nonsense. I can't believe it. And then this is the place that gets Twitch's biggest political star. I'm just saying, once it's on TV, a lot of stuff is more permissible now that you've got the transnational audience, and it's not for just a room of a few thousand Twitch neats.
Those hostages from
Okay, let Emily respond to that.
Everyone wants to criticize the IDF's response, but nobody wants to tell me what should Israel be doing to retaliate October 7th, eradicate Hamas from preventing another October 7th, and bring the hostages
I have
home.
an idea.
Do you have a solution?
I have an idea. Do not flatten Gaza and potentially pull your own hostages up from under the rubble, like have been done with thousands of Palestinians. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have you found any of them under the rubble?
So you're saying that you don't have an answer.
That is the answer.
So you
don't
have
kill
an
your own
answer.
hostages.
But you're quick
That's
to condemn the IDF, but you don't have an answer.
I also
How
have
about
an
not killing the
answer.
hostages?
Very interesting.
I have an answer.
Thank you for proving my point.
It's called the
Yes,
dissolution
Hasan.
of the apartheid regime. That's what it's called. Dissolve the apartheid regime.
So what would you like to
allow
see happen,
Palestinians
Hasan?
breathing room. Do you not understand the English language?
We're
Dissolve
delayed.
the
It's delayed.
apartheid regime.
You need a Xanax, first of all. You need a Xanax.
She said Papa Zanny. Okay. Besides her telling Hasan to Papa Zanny. I would also be confused at Hasan's answer, because dissolution of the apartheid regime could mean many different things. Like, that could mean like a one-state solution, right? That could mean like the Palestinians get the West Bank and Gaza, and then they can create a state, and therefore the regime is gone because they have a state now that the occupation's over, right? So I mean, acceptance of the Saudi deal, for example, could be considered in that framework, and end of that. I mean, giving Palestinians like full voting rights, would that be an end of it? Would it be ending of certain like, what if everything stayed the same, but they ended all the laws that treated Jews and Palestinians differently, but the occupation continued? Like, the ending of the apartheid, I mean, is it pushing out all of Israel and everything's Palestine now? Like, I don't know what that means necessarily. It's very vague. It's just anti-institutional. It's just anti the current Israeli institution. Like, but it doesn't tell me anything else than that. It doesn't tell me what it wants to replace it with. It's like, if someone's like, man, democracy sucks. It's like, okay, what would you like to do instead? Well, I just said, get rid of democracy. It's like, okay, well, but what would you replace it with? I assume like he can answer that question, but I understand why someone would be confused, and I don't think saying, well, what, did you hear me? Not a hearing problem, it's that it's very vague.
Okay, so should Israel do to the West Bank what they did to Gaza?
Have been ruthlessly slaughtered by the Israeli
Israel
state.
give
It makes
back
me a
the
little
land so
upset
that it can
when
turn
someone is
into another
defending
Gaza?
that.
Is that what you'd like to see? Another terrorist haven launching rockets all day instead of turning into Singapore? Because that's what they did in 2005.
Wait, hold on. What is
works.
Singapore?
The billions of dollars in aid they turned into building tunnels. Is that what you'd like to see?
I don't know. Have I gone
Singapore
deaf?
every day?
Sorry,
What,
Emily,
is
is the
Singapore
West
an
Bank
open-air
supposed to be
prison?
Singapore?
What are you talking about?
Is the West Bank supposed to be Singapore?
The West Bank has a port. They can import and export. Israel gave them a great piece of land. They received billions of dollars.
What does she mean by the West Bank has a port? What is she talking about? What? What port does the West Bank have? The West Bank is landlocked. I mean, it's got like a... No, she can't be. She must be confused. She must have confused the Gaza Strip with the West Bank or something. The Dead Sea Port? 1 second. Let me Google so I'm not going crazy here. Is that what she means? Is it... I don't think there's a Dead Sea Port. I think you're fucking with... Okay, you are fucking with me. Thank you. I was like, what? I don't think that's how the Dead Sea works. I don't think the Dead Sea would be sufficient as as transportation infrastructure. You guys just messing with me. You trying to mess me up, juke me out. The Dead Sea Port. Why did I believe that for a second? Now this is a situation where she was supposed to feel like the schmuck, and now I feel like the schmuck.
Dollars in aid, not only from the U.S., but Israel gave. Are you mad? They had a chance to rebuild, but they spent the last 15+ years crying that they don't have enough land because there is never enough land for them instead of rebuilding. But that's okay.
Gotta say, just describing them as wah crying, and I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like somebody like complaining a lot about tone and stuff. You turn that down a little bit. Crying about what? Being displaced from their land, losing generational wealth, the continuation of an occupation. And I mean, they could even be upset at their own political leaders on top of being upset at the Israelis. You wouldn't, I mean, if you ask most Palestinians, they're not a big fan of Mahmoud Abbas.
Build terrorists.
Or even before this war, I mean, Hamas was polling worse and worse every year. I mean, I don't know what the polling data looks like now. Probably not as good.
Don't build hotels and don't rebuild
Israel
civilization.
has
Just build
not
terrorist
allowed
tunnels to keep hostages
Palestinians
in.
to have a nation state that they deserve by international law since the inception of the Israeli nation state. What you are saying is insane to me. The fact that you brought up the last 15 years as Palestinians crying is disgusting.
Oh, I have one more question.
You are a disgusting little monster
one more question.
who thinks
One more question.
that not offering contiguity to the Palestinians in the form of a state, which is under international law, is just simply Palestinians
I have one
crying.
question.
Okay?
This West Bank, Singapore.
That, honestly, Hasan, this is the one part I was like, Hasan should have flipped out even maybe a little bit more here. That's true. Hasan's super on base.
Two-state solution. They want
West
a
Bank,
one-state
Singapore.
solution that eradicates the Israelis, which is not an option.
Fine. This West Bank,
You're wrong.
Singapore, what place
You're wrong.
does the settlements play in that? How? Please paint a picture of how the West Bank of Singapore, or whatever, Singapore of the West Bank, how does this illegal settlements fit into
Ma'am,
that?
I think you're completely missing the picture.
Just explain to me
Israel
how the
wanted to
settlements
give
fit into
them
that picture.
a piece of land. I'm explaining it.
Okay, I'm listening.
The picture is they got a great piece of land to turn into society. Instead
Who
of turning
got
it
the
into
land?
civilized society,
Who did?
Israel gave the land to Gaza. They
So then why
withdrew.
the
They
Israeli
removed
settlers?
It's not
Israelis
Israel's
from
land to
their
give.
homes.
But
It's
then
not
why
Israel's
are
land to
Israeli
give.
settlers?
It is not Israel's land to
2005.
give.
There are no Jews or Israelis. There are no settlements in Gaza.
In the West
they
Bank.
gave it to
in the West
the
Bank. They're not in the
Palestinians.
West Bank.
I'm speaking about Gaza, and now
I'm
you're
asking
changing
about
the
West
narrative.
Bank because I was interested in knowing about Singapore.
I'm telling you that if
Palestinians-
Israel pulls out completely from the West Bank, if Israel pulls out from the West Bank, you can bet your ass it turns into the next Gaza.
This is the problem I have, right? Is that in every formulation I've seen of the Saudi plan put forward, it includes a demilitarized Palestinian state. I haven't seen anything about like a Palestinian standing army, and would most likely mean Israelis control Palestinian airspace, like in previous deals has been offered. If we're going off of previous like Clinton era like negotiations that got its closest. So if the problem would be the fear of rockets and all this other stuff, I mean, why not work with that as a groundwork? Like, okay, fine, we will give you a state if it's truly demilitarized. We can have like constant inspections, but instead it's just, well, you can't work with the Palestinians, so there's no need to give them a state because they would never accept a state, and they never accepted it that one time, so there's no need to do it. Or if we do it, then it'll mean our own destruction. Well, I mean, you didn't do it, and it still meant October 7th happened. So obviously, like, just denying them a state that can vote on the UN, that can govern its own affairs, obviously that didn't fix it. They didn't stop it. It didn't fix the problem, because you still have a stateless people who want a state, who deserve representation as all people do, and want representation as all people do.
The world does not need two Gazas because one Gaza has already caused enough damage. If, however, Gaza decides to demand
Every
that
argument
Hamas
with Israel
removes
is about
themselves from
some
power,
hypothetical.
and they can have democracy,
Israel has to do a
then yes,
genocide,
there's
because if
potential
Israel
for a
doesn't do a
two-state
genocide,
solution.
then the Gaza
There's
is
no
not
genocide.
genocide.
The only genocide is the Hamas charter that wants to eradicate the Jews.
Defensive genocide.
You know, it's interesting the word genocide.
There is no
because-
genocide.
Hang on. It's interesting the
There is
word.
no
It's interesting.
genocide
Hang
happening.
on.
It's just a
Israel is
buzzword.
doing
I would love to get a word in, please.
They have 3 minutes left. Not even 3 minutes left. They're just now opening up the genocide can of worms to have a conversation about that topic, about that word. No, they're not going to be able to have that conversation. Maybe you should have asked that question 10 minutes in, not this far in. Maybe if they didn't include Crackhead Barney for how long was that? Like nearly 7 to 8 minutes. They could have a quick conversation back and forth about that.
Interesting the word genocide, because I've listened to all this fractious debate, everyone talking over each other. The truth is that actually only one side has publicly said that they wish to pursue a genocide, and that is Hamas. Hamas, after October the 7th, through their official spokesman on camera, said they wanted to do it again and again and again. That is the purest articulation of a genocide imaginable. And the one thing I never hear from the pro-Palestinian side is
really think
what Israel was
Piers,
actually... Hang on.
Piers.
No, don't...
Well, I don't know if... I don't want to be a stickler here, but while that would be horrific terror attack after horrific terror attack, whether that would meet the standard of genocide or the goal of genocide, it would tend to depend upon the explicit goal of said operations being the destruction of the Israeli people, or if we're going to use the word like ethnic cleansing, the removal of them from the land, which I do think they want to remove them from the land if they can. but it would depend on what is the goal of said terrorism. Things are done in service of genocide, but individually, if viewed alone, for example, a giant mass grave could be just evidence of one horrific war crime, but as viewed part of a grander plan, grander picture, could be supporting evidence of a genocide.
Interrupt me.
So one
I
Hamas
haven't asked you a
official,
question yet.
One Hamas guy.
Sorry, I
But
need to
that's
ask you a
ridiculous.
question.
You're being a ridiculous person.
I'm not being
You're being a ridiculous
ridiculous
person.
I'm just saying, nobody ever
Because
tells
how
me.
many Israeli officials, even on your show, have said we should keep doing what we have been doing to Gaza over and over again? How does that not register in the same genocidal intent? If you think what that dude was saying, which was, by the way, ridiculous what he was saying, the Hamas official was saying is...
Well, what Hasan would need to argue here is that the long-term Israeli goals is the removal of the Palestinian people from the Gaza Strip and the continuation of into a real second Nakba where they're going to move them all away, take over the land, try to move them into the Sinai, never let them return, and take the land for some hyper-conservative religious schizo reason of, them just needing Gaza or them needing the West Bank either for security reasons, hyper-religious reasons to please Netanyahu's coalition. That would be the place that I think he should be focusing, not just on we have had people here who said we should keep doing what they're doing in Gaza, but then the Israeli officials would argue that what they're doing in Gaza is a bombing campaign, a brutal bombing campaign, but a bombing campaign nonetheless. When we were firebombing city after city in Japan, was that a genocide because of how many civilians it killed? Because we designed napalm bombs or fire bombs that were built specifically and tested to burn these houses to the ground most effectively, and knowing that these cities were all made of wood, it would kill tons of civilians. That isn't necessarily a genocide in and of itself. It could still be considered a war crime. Hell, Curtis LeMay, who led the bombing campaign on Japan, said that if we lost the war, I would be considered a war criminal. But you can have a brutal bombing campaign without genocide. He needs to enter evidence in support of the genocide. This could be part, if, for example, the bombing campaign is part of an effort to displace the population, remove them, and then replace them with settlers, which there are certainly far-right people in Israel who want to accomplish that goal, even if that is not the explicit goal of the Israeli government as of right now, but possibly the goal, and I would say even likely the goal, of maybe even some people in the coalition on the fringes of the far right, because that's the type of people that Netanyahu is laid with. You lay with snakes, you get bitten. I don't even know if Netanyahu would consider it getting bitten. Either way, the bombing, or just the fact that the war is going on, that I wish they opened up this can of worms earlier so they could really get into it, but I mean, they don't have any time to talk about it.
So we're going to do October 7th over and over again.
But he said it.
We are justified in doing it over and over again. Yes, I find that to be abhorrent. However, what you fail to recognize is that's the genocidal intent, but not Amalek. That's the genocidal intent, but not saying we are fighting human animals. And that's why we have to cut off their food, their water, and their electricity. That was Defense Minister Yoav Gallant
There we
who said
go with
that.
the lies
Benjamin
again.
Netanyahu
You're
has
saying Israel
routinely
cuts
talked
off their
about this over and over
electricity.
again.
They don't even
Israeli
provide
interior
their
security,
electricity. You're saying they cut off their water. They don't cut off their water.
politicians,
You are
Israeli-
spewing lies on
Can
national
you stop?
television.
Can you? I'm talking
I think so. Hang on.
I'm not
Again,
gonna
you're
stop.
talking
I'm not gonna
over
let you
each
spew
other.
lies.
Some of
I'm
the
sorry,
some of the
name me another
comments.
army that
There's no
provides
doubt,
aid to
Emily.
people they're at war
I
with.
didn't even get to hear what Hasan was saying because she interrupted. Can someone shut her up, actually?
Some of the
Only
comments.
Israel.
Some of the.
Pierce-
Israel is
No, Pierce, I'm not letting him
the
spew
most
misinformation.
Karen-
I'm not letting
Well,
him-
they just let him spew it and then rebuke it. I mean, if he doesn't spew it, then I mean, whatever.
It's pointless.
planet. I swear to God.
Start it again.
This is the thing. Again, I understand they don't have much time, right? I don't think anything was achieved through this little yelling session at the end. But if you have the time, let someone dig their own hole and then help bury them in it afterwards. Don't stop somebody when they're making a mistake if what she's saying was true. All she did was annoy the audience and annoy me specifically. I can't speak for the audience, but I can certainly speak for myself.
Pointless. We're getting
No,
nowhere.
because he's
Thank you.
spewing
Did Yoav Gallant
misinformation.
not say that?
Israel's cutting off electricity,
Okay.
water, and aid. Just
We're getting-
Did
spewing
Defense
lies. I'm not
Minister
gonna let
Yoav
you do it.
Gallant say we are fighting human animals or not? Answer that question. Did Defense
And then the defense minister would say, well, that was in specific reference to Hamas, not the Palestinian people as a whole, and then they wiggle away.
Minister Yoav Gallant say
I don't like that use of language, though.
we are
Hamas
fighting
is
human
human
animals and we have to cut off
Hamas,
their electricity,
correct.
cut off their
See, there's the argument right there.
food, cut off their water.
Okay.
Yeah, the slight
You know what? I'm going to cut
Israel
off. I'm
provides
going to cut off this
79%
debate.
of their electricity. The rest is Hamas.
I'm going to cut off the
That's
debate
not
because we're
Israel.
getting
Israel
absolutely
provides-
nowhere. But I appreciate everybody joining me. Thank you very much
Do
indeed.
you? I wouldn't. Ah, God. Maybe Piers is the one that really needs his Annie. What a disaster. What a disaster. My goodness.